Save the second half of this one until like June the 30th.
Ask the Hosts, episode 26. I'm Joe, and it's just me for the intro, but there'll be other hosts along very soon. The idea of this show is very simple. You send in your questions to us to show@askthehost.com, and we answer them. The catch is they can be about anything except for Linux and open source. Before we get going, a quick thank you to everyone who supports us with PayPal and Patreon. We really do appreciate that. If you want to join those people, you can go to askthehost.com/support. And remember that Patreon supporters get these episodes 2 weeks before everyone else. Bit of a shorter episode this time. But for the first question, I'm joined by Allan from 2.5 Admins and Martin from Linux Matters. Mag37 asks, if you could choose without constraints of work, school, and family needs, would you rather live in a busy city or in the lonely countryside?
Always the countryside, where I am now. Well, not specifically this bit of the countryside, but I am in the countryside and I would always choose to live in the countryside.
That's interesting. Question, did you grow up in the countryside?
Yes.
Because my answer is the opposite, because I also grew up in the countryside, and having nothing around and no access to things I wanted and needed was always such a detriment. And so while I prefer that my house and so on be in a relatively quiet place so that I'm not disturbed all the time, I definitely would prefer a bigger city and having access to all of the amenities and services and so on that I just didn't have in the tiny village of 1,000 people that I grew up in, because you couldn't buy groceries or computer parts or anything without going on a drive that would take at least half an hour to get anywhere useful.
Now I think this is the difference between you living in a massive country and me living in a tiny country, because even if you're in the countryside here, you're never very far from anywhere. So, some of those things just don't apply, or didn't even apply in the 80s. Like if I needed spare parts for my VIC-20, it was relatively straightforward to get on the bus to Portsmouth, and you could go to, Radio Shack. It was a thing at the time, and you could buy the parts you needed, So, I didn't have those difficulties, even though I've lived in remote places.
Well, then your definition of remote is obviously slightly different than mine. Because, there were no buses here because there would have only be like one person that would ever get on the bus per hour or something. It would be a waste of a bus.
Right. I would choose somewhere more remote. Like if I could choose to live anywhere, I would probably choose the West Country. So down in Cornwall, in the farming areas, as sort of far away from the big towns as possible. I really like it down there.
You see, my friend, his parents used to live down in Devon, so kind of towards that way. And that was properly like 20-minute drive to a supermarket even.
Yeah.
Whereas now where I am in London, there is a 24-hour petrol station which has got a mini supermarket in it. So if I need something basic like bread or whatever, milk, butter, all that kind of stuff, they have that 24/7. Yeah, it's a little bit more expensive than a normal supermarket, but you pay for the privilege of getting it at 3 o'clock in the morning if you need it. And that is a really nice thing to know that, I can walk there. It's I could drive there in like 2 minutes or walk there in like 10 minutes. And so I think my answer is the city, but asterisk. I don't think like proper city centre downtown, as the Americans would call it, because that's just too noisy and loud. I think I would pick that over proper remote countryside. But there is a reason why most people live in the suburbs, because it's a happy compromise. From where I am in London, it's not too far into like proper London city, but it's also not very far out to the countryside either. So it's like a proper cop-out of an answer, but like the suburbs is there for a reason, and I like it.
Here I'm also slightly spoiled in that in about 10 minutes I can get to part of the Bruce Trail, which is a giant cross-country trail network. And so I can be, in the woods on a path with just nature and quiet relatively easy without having to go far from home. And so, when I want that, that's where I like to go for my longer hiking walks and so on. But, it really comes back to the problem with especially the American style suburb, where housing is over there, and then anything commercial, like you're not allowed to have a convenience store in the suburb. It has to be somewhere else. Whereas the older kind of streetcar suburbs, they were called here, where like there'd be a main street with all your shops and maybe apartments above that. And then on the side streets behind that, you would have suburb type housing so that you were on a quiet residential street, but at the end of the block was a commercial street that would have the kind of shops and so on that you would hope to find. Whereas the American style now is suburbs that are off in an old field that was converted to housing. And then there's a giant shopping plaza somewhere. Like I'm recalling back, I think the last time I met Joe in person, 7 or 8 years ago, and we walked from one of those suburbs to like a giant Walmart shopping plaza to go get some supplies and so on. And it was like, yeah, we had to like cut through a fence and under some stuff. And it's like, this was definitely not designed for anybody to walk from their house to the store.
No, it was definitely not a 15-minute city, was it?
No.
The thing is, though, is even here, there are two things. Well, there's three things in the village. There's a pub, excellent. There's a pharmacy, and right next door to the pharmacy is a corner shop. And really, like, if you need to survive, I think those three things are really all you need in, like, walking distance.
Yeah, again, that corner shop's going to be more expensive than a big supermarket, but if you need the thing right now, if you need a loaf of bread, yours has gone mouldy or whatever, and you're starving, then, you'll pay that extra little bit for the bread.
Yeah, or you forget to buy the sherry for the mushroom and sherry sauce when you're doing pork belly, you can, you can go to the corner shop and get it.
Right, we've got a couple of questions coming up now that we recorded back in December. The Christmas episode was way too long, so I've been saving a couple of questions back for the episode that comes out basically as far away from Christmas as possible, because I thought that might be amusing. So joining me for these couple are Popey, Mark and Martin from Linux Matters, and Gary from Linux After Dark and Hybrid Cloud Show. Zero asks, what's the best Christmas present you received when you were a kid?
This is going to age all of us terribly, isn't it?
Yeah, I'll start. A VIC-20 in 1981 when I was 9 years old.
Well, the same. I had a ZX81 at Christmas, and I came down the stairs not knowing what I was getting for Christmas, and my dad knew that a ZX81 with no program loaded is useless to a 9-year-old. And he woke up early in the morning, plugged it into the home TV, the big telly in the lounge, which was the only telly in the house, and sat there and typed in a program out of a book so that I would have something to play on when I first woke up. And he said, here's your computer. And I wrote a blog post about this, and I recycled it a couple of times for the 30th and 40th episodes. And I would like to thank my dad, because I think that started me on a trajectory of really loving computers and started my family hating the fact that I hogged the telly all day on Christmas Day.
Well, mine is somewhat similar. Mine was a Mega Drive in the 90s.
See, I find that super weird. I've heard you talk about like Mega Drive and stuff, and you're like as vehement about not gaming as you are about, I don't own a TV. You're the same like attitude with both of those things, but you seem to pop up and tell us about this little gaming device. I feel like you're a closet gamer.
No, you see, when I was a child, I played computer games.
Okay.
But then I grew up and started playing instruments like a gentleman.
Okay.
Well, enough about your gentleman's instrument.
Hey!
I think when I was about 13, I asked my parents to get me a mobile phone for Christmas.
Wow.
Did they exist then, Mark?
I'm not sure whether you're trying what you're trying to say. We're talking feature phones. We're not talking smartphones here.
So like a Nokia 9110 or something like that. Right. Okay.
So yeah, but they decided that at that time I was too young to have a mobile phone, and they weren't going to get me one. I understand their thinking, but they made what I see as a bit of a tactical error in that year they decided to get my brother a mobile phone for Christmas.
Oh.
So he unwrapped the present that I wanted and was told I wasn't allowed to have, and I was quite cross, which meant that I hadn't fully appreciated the present that they had got me, which once my rage had subsided, I came to thoroughly appreciate the fact that they bought me a Palm 3E Palm Top computer for Christmas, which is the best Christmas present I've ever got.
Is that why, like, how many years later it is? 5 years later, you're still using graffiti on mobile phones
That is correct.
now?
That is why my preferred input method on touchscreens is graffiti rather than an on-screen keyboard.
Nobody picked up the 5 years. All right, okay.
No, I did.
I just let it slide.
I've been using it on Android for more than 5 years.
I think you're using the same app that came out on Android in like 2011, right?
Yeah.
Well, the keyboard I use on Android got bought by Microsoft, and I have to just see Microsoft SwiftKey every time I install it or use it.
Or send them all of your key presses.
Yep, exactly.
Well, I think the best present I ever got was a Yamaha keyboard, because what it taught me is that I do not ever want to learn to play an instrument. And that actually the thing I prefer is making people who can play instruments sound okay. So what it taught me was that I have an appreciation for music, and I have an appreciation for what music should sound like in a live setting.
It's not one comes out of your fingers. No.
Yes, exactly. Unless you want a rendition of Yankee Doodle, only with the right hand on the keyboard, then I'm probably not your man. But what it taught me was that actually live sound production is the thing that I'm actually interested in to do with music. And there are far less people wanting to do that than there are play the instrument itself, as it turns out.
All right. Dirt asks, do you repeatedly watch any movie around Christmas and have made it kind of a tradition?
Not me, but Sophie has. There is a copy of Elf on our set-top box, which was recorded many years ago off the telly, and it has stayed there. It's the only thing that has never been deleted off our set-top box, and I think that's the single reason we have never switched away from Virgin Media, is because there's a copy of Elf on our set-top box that gets watched every Christmas. I've got it on DVD.
It's on every streaming service.
Yes, I don't have a DVD player. I've got the DVD of Elf, and there's ways I could watch it, but it is tradition that we scroll all the way to the bottom of the Virgin Media list of things to play and play Elf.
Send your DVD of Elf to Mark. I hear he does quality rips.
But it still wouldn't be the one that was recorded in 2006 from Channel 5, would it?
Yeah, it doesn't have the same adverts in the middle. Yeah.
Well, mine is not a movie. Mine is an episode of a TV show. In the last few years, the tradition has formed that we will watch the Bottom Christmas Special, which is
nice.
Very much a puerile comedy show from the 90s, for people who don't know, with Rick Mayall and Adrian Edmondson. And I don't know why we watch that. It's ridiculous, but it's funny, and we just find ourselves watching it as a Christmas tradition.
It's a little bit in the traditional of the Christmas pantomime, I suppose.
I suppose, yeah.
My partner always insists that we watch Love Actually every Christmas, which I don't mind.
Are you playing on your Steam Deck at the same time?
I tried to get the young people in my family interested in Star Wars as a Christmas viewing spectacle.
What's their favourite? Is it Jean-Luc Picard or the Worf thing?
No, they're right there with you because they couldn't give a shit.
See, my dad watches Star Wars at Christmas.
Right.
I didn't know this, but he told me this. I was like, oh, all right, you watch this every year. Okay. Didn't realise that.
Is it a Christmas film like Die Hard? Is there an argument about Star Wars being a Christmas movie?
The holiday special?
Yeah, no, we don't talk about that.
Well, there is that, but I think mostly because there was a period where after it came out in the 70s, in the sort of the mid 80s, it was one of those syndicated films on the television, and it had a lot of sort of, pop culture gravitas, and I was a big fan of it. But yeah, I tried to get the kids to watch it one Christmas, and they kind of just gave me this withering teenage look of like, you old man, like, why do we care about this nonsense? And it was like, okay, I will never make that mistake again.
I try and ensure that the TV is broken in our house at Christmas, because when I was a kid, all we would do after Christmas dinner is sit and watch the TV for the entire afternoon, and no one would talk to each other, and I just can't stand it. Until a couple of years ago, where we went to visit the in-laws for the first time, and they insisted we watch the Queen's speech because, quote unquote, that's what English people do at Christmas. I've never watched it in my life.
Yeah, Queen's speech, that is my favourite dish, yeah.
I can't remember the last time
when she was alive?
Yeah, of course, it's His Majesty the King now.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen, head of state speech for many decades, I don't think. Maybe since I was living at home with my parents.
No, I don't think I'd seen it ever until a bunch of Irish people made me watch it because they assumed that that's what I wanted to do.
Oh, bless.